It is now time for the Austin Hour with your host, Jim Austin.
Good morning. My name is Jim Austin, and I am the show host of the Austin Hour, which is part of Jim Austin Online. We're here at the Austin Plaza in Fort Worth, just off I-30 and Beach Street. This is the inaugural show of the Austin Hour, and my special guest is my friend, John Wright.
Jim, I appreciate you inviting me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the last couple of weeks, and it's an honor to be on this, but especially to be your first guest. Appreciate it very much.
Well, I'm a little nervous, John, to tell you the truth.
I don't believe you're nervous.
Well, you and I met at Rotary. We belong to the Rotary International in Fort Worth, and we've only known each other, 2 or 3 years, or not even that long?
No, not that long.
Well, John, when I would see him at Rotary, said, Jim, I need to get with you and talk to you about what I do. And I was so impressed. We went to breakfast at the downtown Fort Worth and had a good time talking about leadership. And sometimes I'm a leader on some days, and some days I'm not. So I'm looking forward to taking your class on leadership to strengthen my skills in leadership. Tell the audience what you do, how long you've been doing it, and so on and so on. You
bet. Let me tell you how it began. I got married at a very young age, and I'm going to say something that's going to blow my wife's mind, that I'm going to share this with you because it's kind of personal, but this is the truth. We were teenage parents, and so you know what brought that about. But when we found out we were going to be parents, I go to work the next day after talking her into marrying me on a Saturday morning, and she agreed to do this on a Wednesday night. So Thursday morning I go to work and I tell this man who I work for, who's an elderly, grandfatherly type of guy, and I say, what's happening with me, and I need to take Saturday off. I thought he was going to congratulate me and say no problem, but he said, no, you can't have off. I don't have anybody to take your place. So I actually worked Saturday from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and as God is my witness, Karen and I got married at 7 p.m. on Saturday night, October 7th, 1972. I never forgot that. About a year later, I went to work for a guy named Jim Yoke, and Jim Yoke changed my life. And one day I walked into work. I've always been a happy-go-lucky guy. Fortunately, I was just kind of born with that disposition. And this morning I had a rough morning. And Jim said, what's the matter? And I said, nothing. And he kept asking me until I would tell him what's up. And I said, just my wife's had a rough morning, that's all. He said, you need to go home and spend the day with Karen. I said, Mr. Yoke, I can't afford to take a day off. He said, oh, no, we're going to pay you. And I had a flashback, and I thought, here's a man over here who wouldn't give me off without pay to get married. And here's a man who sends me home and will pay me for it to be with my wife who's depressed. That's when I learned there's such a thing as a bad boss and a leader. Jim Yoke changed my life. I spent 35 years in retail optical because of him, but I'm a better person because of him. And so for almost 40 years, I've been studying management, leadership, bad bosses, and so that's kind of what I do for a living, Jim. And the reason I do that is because most organizations have no idea what impact, good or bad, an immediate supervisor has. And it doesn't matter what level of the organization they're in. They can be a frontline supervisor or they can be a CEO. But those people can be a bad boss, they could be a mere manager, or they could be an inspirational leader. If they're an inspirational leader, they change that person's life, and that's really the business we're in. We're in the business of changing people's lives so that they not only achieve the talent potential that they have, but they become better people. A bad boss, on the other hand, it hurts people's marriages, it harms their health, it harms their finances. It's a tragic situation, and most organizations have no idea who the bad bosses are, believe it or not. And most managers manage, but they don't lead inspirationally. And there's no system for identifying this. The only people who know a bad boss is a bad boss are the employees, and they ain't talking. Because they've learned very quickly that the fastest way to the door is to say something bad about your boss.
That is true.
So a good organization will admit they have that issue, and we have simple strategies that'll help them move the needle.
Yes, sir. Well, my background is when I graduated from high school, I went to what I call the Black Mecca, Howard University. And my first 3 years, I majored in pharmacy, and I was kind of lost. But I finally found out that you could major in being a businessman, and I went into the School of Business. Immediately, my juices connected. I felt at home, and I said, I'd like to be the president of this school, the Howard University School of Business, 1,100 students, and I put my plan in action as a freshman to go on and do a campaign, and I eventually won. First time in the history of Howard University, we ran on a slate. I went and got a freshman rep, sophomore rep, vice president, and so on, and our whole slate won. That was something that let me know about my leadership skills, is that I always wanted to be a leader. And I went on to graduate and went with American Express and got that corporate training of leadership, management, marketing from American Express. And after staying with them 5 years and doing that, I decided that I want to be an entrepreneur. So leadership is so important, and that's why I tell the story about that fact of my track record. And what we want to do here at Jim Austin Online is we're talking about putting together a program of leadership training, and I know we're going to be doing that in April. But tell us a little bit about your company and what you do, because I see you how you move around in Rotary and how you interact with people and how you interacted with me, and every time we would see each other, there was something in your eye that said, this is a good guy. And I appreciate you being here on the Austin Hour as our inaugural show.
I appreciate that very, very much. The business, Jim, is called Simple Leadership Strategies. And the reason we call it that is because in all the years of studying this stuff, I've come to the conclusion that it's simple stuff. It's just not easy. So when we interact with an individual or an organization, we don't say, hey, we've got new information, or here's a 21st century approach. This stuff is centuries old. It's simple, but it's just not easy. So that's why we call it simple. We call it leadership because there's a big difference between management and leadership. And you need both. You can be a good manager and a bad leader. You can be a good leader and a bad manager. You do not get that choice. If you want the best from an individual or a team, you have to do both really well. And that takes training. It takes an education, but mainly it's not information. We say all the time, Jim, we live in a world of too much information and not enough transformation. We don't need more information. We know enough. We need to act on what we know. And so that's kind of where we focus. The first thing we talk about is a process called meaningful and lasting change. It's kind of based on cognitive behavioral therapy, but that's really for people that are kind of depressed or they have anxiety issues and you're trying to get them from negative to zero. But that same process works for somebody who's already successful, and you can make them more successful. The two things we say, to simplify, what we really do, Jim, is to help people to admit and commit. If you don't admit you can get better, then you won't get better. But once you admit, you got to commit. And here's what we've found out. 30% of the people don't admit. They don't think they have a problem. Another 30% think they have a problem, but it's not that bad. Another 30% know that it's serious, but are still unwilling to pay the price. Only 10% of the people are willing to do it, and half of them drop out. That's why only 5% of individuals and organizations are truly successful in the long run.
Wow. John, I know we've only got, this is an hour show, and we have half an hour on the air with you, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for a minute and take a break, so we can take a commercial break, because that's how we pay the bills with a commercial. So
I'm not going anywhere.
Well, good. We're going to sign off right now, and we'll come back with John Wright and talking about leadership. Hi, Facebook crowd out there. Welcome back to the Austin Hour. We're here at the Austin Plaza talking to my friend John Wright about leadership. We're also to have our Facebook friends live, so tune in. Hi, Facebook friends on Jim Austin Online. And a little bit about Jim Austin Online. We've been around about 10 years, and this is a new segment for our communications. We have a newsletter, a website. We have a 24-hour jazz station, and now we have a TV network. So today is my first inaugural show with John Wright. We're sitting here in front of the Wall of Fame and a few people up there, and John's requested that he would like to be up on that wall, and I said we can make that happen today. But John, tell us a little bit about the 5 principles of leadership, what it takes to be a good leader.
Absolutely. Jim, let me start with simplifying what the outcome is, because you can be a leader but be the wrong kind. All right, the first person that comes to mind is Hitler. There's Charles Manson. People willingly follow those folks, but it didn't turn out too well. So we need to say, this is how you identify whether this is the right kind of leader. It's 3 outcomes. The first thing is that they follow you because they want to. But again, that was also true of some bad leaders. But the other 2 things is, the second thing is that the individual accomplishes things they didn't know they could accomplish. So they turn talent into performance at a level that the person didn't even know they were capable of. But the second thing, which is even more important, they make them better people. So we call that developing talent and unfolding the soul. If you do those 3 things, they follow you willingly, you develop your talent beyond what you thought you were even capable of, and you're a better person, then you know you're the right kind of leader. So that's what we're looking for. That's the end result. Now, we have a structure and a sequence, and this sequence is essential. It has to flow, right? If you were going to build a 5-story building and say a condominium, and on the 5th floor it had the bar and it had an indoor pool, and that's your favorite thing, you can't go, let's build the 5th floor first. You can't do that, right? You got to build the foundation and build your way up. So the mind thinks in pictures. So we have this little chart, and it looks like a 3-layer wedding cake with a cake pan and icing. So if you'll picture that, all right? Now, what the 3-layer cake sits on is the pan. The pan is positive psychology. Nothing changes until people change the way they think. Nothing. So many changes don't last. People that quit smoking go back to smoking. People that come out of prison go back to prison. People that lose weight gain the weight. I know a lady that married and divorced the same guy twice. Change is very, very difficult. We're after transformation. That's very, very tough. So you got to change the way you think. So positive psychology is not just about getting results through people, which is what management is traditionally all about. It's about people thriving. So that's the cake pan, changing the way people think. Now you have the 3 layers: who you are, what you do, and where you're going. Who you are is your character. That earns and keeps trust, or it loses it. Now, character is hard to change. It's almost impossible, but it's not impossible. Very few people have a written strategic plan to become a better person. But if you want people to follow you willingly, if you want to develop their talent beyond what they thought was possible, if you want them to become a better person, then you better be a good person, and you better have a plan to become better all the time. So that's the first layer. Who you are earns trust. The second layer is what you do and how you do it. Now that's the talent piece. So that's your performance. That is what builds confidence. We ask people all the time, have you ever worked for somebody and you've said to yourself, how in the world did they get this job? And people, that's just what they do. They go, yeah, all the time. They go, well, this person can't even manage people, and they didn't even do this job before. You know, they were hired by who knows. But so what you do and how you do it, that's very critical, and that never ends. So that's the second layer. The third layer is about purpose. Everybody, not just millennials, baby boomers, want to do something that makes a difference. And that's where the inspiration comes in. Motivation is important. It's critical. But there's a big difference, Jim, between motivation and inspiration. And you need both. Inspiration comes from a clear purpose. So now there's parts to that. Once you understand what your purpose is, you have to understand what your values are and what it looks like when you're successful. That's your vision. You put all that together, then that's what inspires people. Then you have icing on the cake. That's the emotional intelligence part. You can have all that stuff and still be immature. And you fly off the handle, and you lose your self-control, and you freak out when things start going bad. Well, everybody following you, then they're going to freak out, or they're going to get. So you've got to be mature. You've got to have self-control. You've got to manage your own emotions. You've got to recognize other people's emotions. You've got to help them when they trigger to the wrong spot to get them back, and they got to feel good. And if you're after excellence, you need all those things. So the cake pan, positive psychology, 3 levels of the cake: who you are, that earns trust; what you do, that builds confidence; where you're going, that inspires action; and then the icing on the cake makes people feel good so that their heart is in it. Now, that's it. We will say that anything you will ever learn about organizational development, team building, employee engagement, achieving excellence, they fall into there somewhere. So now you have a structure, you have a play, and that's how you learn. You connect things and you put them in the right place. Now, we say none of this is new. This is all common sense. The sequence is kind of rare. You've got to have a sequence. You have to have a structure, right? The alphabet doesn't go A, B, F, Q. It's A, B, C, D. You have to have a sequence. You have to have a structure. We have that. It's simple, Jim. It's just not easy. The biggest problem is that, and we say this all the time, our biggest problem isn't that we don't know what to do. Our biggest problem is that we don't do what we know, including me, including you. You may be a good leader most of the time. Maybe I am most of the time. But you just ask my wife. There are times I'm not.
Yes, sir. Well, training is so important, as myself being an entrepreneur, is trying to be a leader with my staff and make sure that they know that I appreciate them as their leader. Because by doing that, then there's a better performance with leadership. What type of people do you do this for? Who would our listening audience be a good candidate to take your training?
It's one of my favorite questions. People tend to think that it's an industry, that it's a size of an organization. This has worked for nonprofit organizations. It's worked for one of the world's largest retailers. It's worked for one of the world's largest offshore organizations. I've done it for some other organizations and it hasn't worked. So the key is simply the individual that leads the team. And that could be the CEO of a small company, or it could be a regional and he has 20 locations. Whatever it is, it's that individual that's over that team, and they're the right kind of leader, but they don't necessarily have a process to take that skill set and train it and teach it. So it doesn't matter the size of the organization. It just matters who's in charge and do they want to make their team better. We can help that individual. That's
a beautiful thing. How can people reach out to you? What's your website?
SimpleLeadershipStrategies.com. I'll tell you, I'll give you my cell number. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
This is 817-881-8490. I believe in what we call high touch. It's all about relationships. If you call my cell phone, I'm going to answer it, or I'm going to be with somebody and I'll call you back.
That's it. I got proof. Now, when we met, you kind of took me aback because you've got some special talent, and we're trying to figure out how we can use that on Jim Austin Online. And you do impersonations, you sing. Can you end up the show with a little song?
Absolutely. You know by now I do about 25 different singers, but my favorite is Dean Martin.
Yes.
And he's just in my blood, and so I'll just let it
go.
Well, I want to thank you all for tuning in. You just keep all them cards and letters coming. I want to thank that little old lady from Hoboken for sending me that butterscotch. Next time, please send a little less butter and a lot more scotch. Everybody loves somebody. Oh, he sings good sometime.
What about some Lou Rawls real quick?
You'll never find, it'll take the end of all time, someone who understands you like I do. Poor Lou Rawls is turning over in his grave, poor man.
I know. And then last, and we need to sign off, is Jerry Lewis.
Oh, lady, I gotta go. Don't hit. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Jim.
You're a funny guy, man. John Wright. It's been my pleasure.
The legend. Can't believe I'm in your presence.
Uh-oh. I'm here with John Wright. We're going to sign off right now. Thank you for coming on the Austin Hour.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
My pleasure.